Hey, what's up, Caitlin here, and wow, that is loud. That's my Roomba. Hopefully, that's not too loud. What I had a thought that I wanted to try to unpack a little bit here in this particular video, which is it surprises me that as software developers, we don't write more software for ourselves. And here's what there's different ways to write software for yourself. I think what probably a lot of developers do is maybe create some tooling to help them with their work, maybe some bash scripts or something to help them with their work. But as far as creating more like full-blown applications, it's just very rare that we do that. It just occurred to me the other day, and the reason it occurred to me was because I was doing some stuff and I was messing around with like a CRM application recently, and still working on that. And then with Commerce Hero, with the app, I'm messing around with like a progressive web app, new version of it, which is basically there's all this administrative work that I do for Commerce Hero, and I basically said, why don't I create an app that actually is faster to use, easier to use, that I actually like to use, and then I'll repurpose that for other people to use it as well. And I haven't done a great job with that. I'm not as far ahead along as I'd like to be, but the idea that occurred because all of the best software out there, it was essentially a scratch your own itch type of a thing, right? Like Facebook, they were simulating a lookbook from their college. YouTube, people were trying to send. It was scratching their own itch to be able to send a video to their friend, and the list can go on and on. Like so much software out there that's really successful was just somebody solving their own problem and basically writing software for themselves, whether for like a personal use case or a business use case or whatever. And I just find that out of myself included and a lot of the software developers I know, like it surprises me that we don't write more software for ourselves. And because the ability to write software is basically a superpower. Like people that aren't able to write software, when they look at a software developer, it's like it's magic. It's like you make magic happen on computers, and it's something I'll never be able to do, and it's just totally awesome. Like that's how people that don't know how to do it look at those of us that can do it. It's like how I look at like a Cirque du Soleil dancer, is like that's totally magic. I could never do that ever. It's just magic, and that's sort of what software development is. It's like, and that's why software development is a well-paid job and things like that, obviously, because you create a lot of value by writing software. But it just occurred to me like, man, it's weird that we as developers don't create more stuff for our, like, that we don't scratch our own itches more. And I got some feedback on this. Some people said, well, that's because there isn't really time to work on things outside of work. And I can respect that. I think it's important to have work-life balance. But even within a job, like even within your job, I think to a certain extent, a lot of the best developers that I know are constantly building out tools and open sourcing. There's a problem that they have to solve, and they take the solution they built and they open source it, and then they iterate on it, and other people iterate on it, and before you know it, there's a great sort of product there, whether it's open source or not, that came just out of somebody's day job, essentially. So I don't know that it necessarily has to be something a side project that you're working on additional hours after your 40-hour week. I think it could be something you do. Obviously, some companies are more and less friendly to open source, but it doesn't even have to be open source. It can be, here's a problem that a client has. Let's build a tool to solve that problem for them, and then we can leverage it for other clients or whatever. And it just seems to me like that was just the thing that occurred to me is like, as developers, it's surprising how little code we write for ourselves. And maybe it's the shoemaker's kids don't have any shoes parable, that maybe that's all it is. But another analogy I thought, it'd be like if, a lot of developers, you say, well, do you have an application you've built for yourself? And it's like, well, no, I just do my work. Imagine if you met somebody that made guitars, and they made guitars. They're a professional guitar maker for 20 years, and you're like, you would assume that like they've made a guitar for themselves. Like they probably have this awesome guitar that they tell you this whole story about how the wood is, some 17th century oak, and they have this beautiful guitar that they made for themselves, and it's like their prized possession. Like, it just seems intuitive to me that a guitar maker would have this awesome guitar, or maybe they'd have like 10 awesome guitars they made for themselves. Whereas as developers, I think it's rare that a developer has a piece of software that they've written for themselves. Other than maybe, like I said, maybe you do some tooling here and there, but it's really not a full-blown application. And that would like be the equivalent of the guitar maker being like, oh, like I have a couple of guitar strings that I've worked on, a couple of like tools for tuning my guitar, and you're like, but you didn't make yourself like an actual guitar. Like, you should make yourself like an actual guitar, And maybe it's just that software is harder to make than guitars. I don't know. Or maybe it's that it requires a cross section of skills of front end and back end and product design and stuff, and the elusive full stack developer doesn't really exist. I don't know. But even just as a back end developer, there's a lot of cool stuff you could build. There's a lot of API integrations you could do